Yeah. Okay. Let's start off with client updates, I guess. I can see Manu on the call. Do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Good morning. So, as you may know, Prism still has an issue about the number of files on its database. So, with the current database design for data columns, Prism for Supernode needs like more than 10 million different files, which explodes literally the inode count on disk, and you have some Prism Supernode which are down right now on the devnet. So mainly my task of the last week was to work and to implement a new database design to save all data columns for a block is in only one file and not in 128 files for Supernode, for example. I still hope to have a pull request for today. So it was mainly my main task, and also Francis from Base worked on engine get blob v2. Yes, it is still in progress. That's all for me. Maybe
Perfect. Who's the next client team?
I see Teku, Dimitri.
Yeah, Teku. We are working on validator custody. We are finishing the feature and starting to testing it interop Teku with Teku, but not finished yet. That's all.
Okay. Agnish, do you want to go for Nimbus?
We're finishing up on column syncing without supernodes as well. And we have made some progress in validator custody, but we are also implementing GetBlobs v2. GetBlobs v2 should be finished off in like by the next 2 days, and I'll see if we can end it up. And I think validated custody would take me a bit more time because I'm kind of working on the columns backfilling thing. Yeah, that should give me some more time, maybe by the end of this week. Yeah, that's pretty much the next bit.
Okay. Matthew, do you want to go for Lodestar?
Not a ton of updates. I was on vacation this week. Gajinder did address a bunch of the comments on the PR body for making the validator custody static. And, still waiting to see where that lands.
Sounds good. Deadline for Lighthouse, maybe?
What do you mean, maybe? Still here.
Yeah, not sure if you were doing the updates or not for Lighthouse.
Yeah, we are currently stuck with sync issues. That's our main problem as of now. And we suspect that some clients are faulty and our scoring logic is not there yet. We are not aggressive enough penalizing bad behavior. So we get stuck with buggy clients and we cannot progress sync. So we have a lot of improvements and refactors that we know we have to do, but it's quite a bit of stuff. And we are implementing them now, but it's going to take a while. But hopefully that should sort these issues in the case that the network is adversarial or clients have bugs. So, for example, as of now, we try to sync from a peer that doesn't serve as columns, and then we try again from the same peer, and then we get stuck there, when we should just penalize the peer away. Besides that,
are these buggy behaviors maybe written down somewhere? For example, which peer was advertising columns that they don't have? And the question is, we should also be fixing said peer, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think Jimmy reported, I think it was Prism. Yeah. Which is great. Like, thank you for giving us testing cases.
You're welcome. Yeah, I just asked to Jimmy to give me the parameters of the sync column by branch request, which was faulty for me to reproduce.
Cool. Agnesh?
Yeah, I think some of the like inability to serve column range requests was because of the like to and fro switch. I don't know like if it's fro, but at least to switch from a super node to full node or vice versa. Because if we do that, we are, I think, not currently backfilling. So I asked this question to Jimmy a couple of days ago, and he said that if we don't resync, the VN shouldn't start up. In my opinion, I think we shouldn't do that. We should have an external, like not external, of course, but a column backfilling loop that can use the block database to like advance slots and fill the excess columns.
In
If
that
that makes
scenario,
sense.
would you advertise the excess columns before you finish the backfilling, or would you update your ENR later?
I would update my ENR once I have backfilled up to the final, at least the finalized head. At least, yeah.
Okay. The other
But
client
I think,
is the idea that each team chooses what the approach is.
Okay, I just want to say something. Yeah, in my opinion, I think inhibiting from a BN startup and asking the user to resync is not a good idea because it just adds. I mean, the node is just not ready, and we need to actually like kind of figure out the odds of getting a range request like that. Moreover, if we advertise our ENR later, we won't be downscored. So I don't think there's point in inhibiting the BN to start up. I think the BN should start up as soon as it normally starts up, and then it should slowly backfill the columns and then advertise the updated ENR.
Yeah, I think as long as we follow that approach, it sounds sane. Yeah, we're just trying to make the parallel to the EL world where that exists right now. For example, if you switch a full node with the archive flag, it doesn't backfill anything. It would essentially require you to resync. But yeah, I get that the CL world doesn't, for example, have to backfill to Genesis or something.
No,
So
I think it should backfill from minimum epoch, like last 4096.
Yeah, exactly. Till the amount that is in scope,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, in our case, we want to have strong database invariance where we are very confident about the state of the DB with respect to what columns are there and what columns are not there. And at the same time, unless it's strictly necessary, we don't want to implement a dedicated backfilling routine for columns. That's why if the user tries to switch back and forth from supernode and non-supernode, we basically check what's the set of columns that I'm supposed to have in the DB and what's the set of columns that you want to have me now. And if they don't match, then we will not allow the user to start.
It feels like this is something that we can let the client decide as long as we align on the fact that each node only advertises the columns it has rather than not the columns that it will have. As long as we have that shared understanding, I feel like it's fine to just leave it to each client to decide what approach they want.
Yeah, I think that's fine, but we have to be aware that all clients, whenever they check one thing, they will always break that rule.
Because they won't yet have the columns, right? They would have to first backfill.
Yeah, when you check one thing, your DB is empty, and there is no way in the status message for you to express that state.
And what is being done right now? Say I checkpoint sync a new node. I'm just advertising columns I don't have.
Nothing. Like this is the same issue if you checkpoint sync and you try to backfill blocks like today in the NEP, and you connect to another checkpoint sync node that's a little bit ahead of you, you will maybe try to get blocks from it that it claims to have and doesn't have, and then you will disconnect from it, which is fine. Like if you really want to backfill, you want the blocks, so you want to have at least some peers that have blocks for you to complete your task.
Yeah, Agnish?
Yeah, exactly. I am exactly what Manu wrote in the comment section. We can have an indicator. Uh, that should solve the problem.
Yeah, but so this
Mm,
pointer will show the progress in terms of blocks, in terms of columns. Like what
In
if
terms
you
of in terms of sidecars. So in terms of columns or rows.
and
but
but
this feels
what
a
about
bit
blocks?
messy.
Um,
Yeah.
um, in my opinion, it should show the progress in terms of everything. So as long as as long as all blocks and blobs and columns are not correctly backfilled, it should indicate that backfill is still in progress.
But I mean, I can already tell you how I'm going to be malicious with this. I will basically advertise that I'm always backfill in progress, and then you never downscore me, and I continue getting data from you forever.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
we
It's
would
kind of
downscore you once we receive bad stuff, right? Like once you bluff, we are happy, like we are
Yeah, but if
But
I'm
then once
backfill in progress, the understanding is you never receive stuff from me. So you're not requesting stuff from me.
okay.
So you basically created a
so it
situation where
doesn't
I
add much
can
information.
attach a malicious, yeah. I can be a malicious node on the network forever,
Yeah,
and
but
you will never downscore.
you can be a malicious node on the network about validator custody already. You can modify the client and in a way that you will never custody more than 4 subnets. It's already possible.
Sure, yeah. With validator custody, you can be that, I agree with. But here I could spin up 1,000 nodes. All 1,000 nodes say I'm backfill in progress. So I continue leeching data from every other good peer, but I never provide anything back to the network.
I mean, you could add more than just that flag of backfill in progress, where you'd have state like how far you've backfilled, and if it stays static, you know that person is lying.
Yeah, I guess. But then the question is this complexity worth it?
No. So consider this case. You advertise a specific value with backfilling progress, and then you query blocks, and then you get no blocks. This is equivalent to just querying the blocks and getting no blocks. So you still have to query the data and check that the data is there or not. So you can just issue queries, and if you don't get what you expect, because this is historical data, you can easily know what you're supposed to get. So in my view, it doesn't add much information if you can just ask for the data you need and check if you get it or not.
Yeah, it feels like peer scoring already accounts for this. So there's no real need to add more logic, right?
Yeah. Like in Lighthouse, what we want to do is not nilly-willy downscore anyone that we try to backfill from, but at least allow. So unless we have X amount of peers that we can backfill from, then we are happy, and not force everyone to be on the same backfilling progress as we are. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Unless
I guess
that, yeah. Sorry.
I guess the TLDR of the discussion would basically be don't advertise anything you don't have, right?
Well, my point I was bringing up is that with the current spec, you will always break that rule, at least for some time. And I think that's fine, but we have to be aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah. We probably have to do some edge case stuff, where a whole portion of the network is syncing after non-finality or whatever, but that feels like a problem we haven't been at anyway.
We can have a bit more aggressive downscoring if malicious node lies about backfill in progress.
Is there maybe some way we can first find out if what we have is broken? like if any action is required at all.
No, I mean, let's say a node is lying about backfilling progress, and we still get bad blocks, or we don't get any blocks at all. We have a separate downscoring for basically misinforming. We can do that.
But do we actually need this backfilling progress in DNR? Or do we not actually have to do anything? Because current peer storing algorithms should be able to handle it.
So for columns, I don't think like in itself, because updating the ENR, advertising the higher ENR after backfilling is fine. But yeah, as like Lion mentioned, the checkpoint sync, that situation, it might be useful, but okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to sort of echo what Francesco also wrote, this is kind of an invariant, or like this is how the network behaves today anyway. It doesn't feel like we're changing this behavior in PeerDAS. Even today, when you checkpoint sync, you're advertising that you have blobs that you don't really have. So it feels like a lateral shift that we don't need to fix unless we find an issue we need to fix.
Yeah, but everybody has the blobs and the blocks. Not everybody has the columns. So you have a much smaller subset of peers that you could sync from in order to get the columns.
Got it. So I guess the argument there is that we're basically making it harder to sync. So we need to have a more robust way to sync, or a more robust indicator of who is good to sync from. Okay. Do we think this is something we can figure out if it's a problem to begin with? I'm not sure what sort of test can help us figure this out, but it feels like something we should first try and figure out before we jump into solutions.
Yeah, I would say let's try the approach of today. Like just try to do a request, and if that's not enough, then we can study this.
We've actually been adding metrics about this exact topic. Try to understand like how successful our requests are.
Yeah, but this doesn't add peers with more columns. It just gives you a shortcut to obtain an information that you can obtain anyway today with the current spec.
I think there is a relevance of the flag with regard to debuggings, because when we are debugging and we are trying to sync, and we basically are always confused that okay, this particular peer advertises that it had this custody, but we are not getting it, and it basically makes debugging a whole lot difficult. So this flag can be used in that direction, but obviously no assumption should be made on top of this particular flag. So if you want to disconnect a peer that can't serve you your custody because you want to add other peers who could serve you, then you should do that on at level of client. But for debugging purposes, this definitely makes sense because when we have this so many cases that we don't get the matching columns, and then we are confused as to why this particular node is not providing us that data.
Sorry, what flag?
Yeah. Let's have this as the last exchange, and then maybe we move on to the next.
Yeah, let's move on. For me, it's good.
So for now, we do nothing, basically. We're just going to investigate and possibly do next step.
Exactly. And I think one of the last points I also want to mention is that I think we might over-index on a really small network. We literally have PeerDAS networks with 20 nodes. I feel like this problem goes away at larger numbers. Yeah, Agnish, do you want to?
I mean, I would basically not see it as a problem. I would basically want that, okay, this is an indicator which can help us in debugging the network. So there is no point just adding it in. And if the clients can indicate whether they have the custody or not. I think that is a great information to be shared with the peers.
In general, we need to increase the probability of the intersecting columns, right? So either we have like randomly round robin query peers, or we basically cut down the event space. But like that way, we also increase the probability of finding intersecting column custody. So I think cutting down the event space, like you can basically, like if you have backfill and progress flag, it basically helps you to cut down the event space faster when you're column syncing. And it would basically make the column syncing more robust. Yeah, and of course, debugging would be easier too.
Okay. Yeah, let's maybe get a bit more data on this and then we can figure out how to proceed. It could be that validator custody plus bigger networks also give us better insight on how well this works. But yeah, acknowledge that we might need to figure out how to more robustly figure out who has what columns.
Yeah, sorry, last point. You can just collect metrics from every client.
Yeah.
On what's the current backfill progress.
Yeah. That should be good.
Are clients offering this as a metrics endpoint?
I would say probably we just need to find what metric is who.
I think we've standardized the metric, so it should actually be the same one. But yeah, let's time box this. I think we might have already spent a bit too much on the topic. So the next is updates on DevNet 5. So we have been spending the last week making the network a bit more malicious. There's roughly 3 nodes on the network that are either withholding columns or delaying block publishing or delaying column publishing by roughly 2-ish seconds. And I think we have a bug in Prism. Do you want to expand on that, Manu?
Are you talking about the bug about the database? Why?
Was that just the database or was there any other Prism bug?
So at the moment, I'm aware of at least 2 Prism bugs. It's the one of the database, so that's why Prism supernodes are now down because there is not enough inode available. I'm working on it to define a new database type. And the other one is a bug about Prism not serving correctly data columns by range that Jimmy and Grandin raised. That's all. Maybe there is not. Maybe there is other bugs, but I'm not aware of them.
Okay, that's good to know. So basically, the withholding stuff has not triggered any other cases that we were worried about.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So we'd probably wait for the fixes to come in, both on Lighthouse as well as Prism, and then add more withholding nodes to the network. Nice. Also, we have roughly 60-ish% full nodes on the network, which they also seem to be stable of late. So all good signs. Anything else for Pectra DevNet 5 that we want to discuss? Sorry, PeerDAS DevNet 5. Okay. Then the next topic would be DevNet 6. So what's happening in the world of validator custody? I think most clients are still working on implementing it. Could we get a status update on if there's a blocker, or is it just requiring more time for the code to be written?
So for Prism, it's implemented with the new version of Prism. Hopefully I have today with corrected database. This version will include validator custody as well. So that means that current full nodes on the PeerDAS DevNet will probably become by default super nodes. because I think they have too many validators. 64, if I'm not wrong. But right now, Prism implements validator custody, but does not implement backfill. Does not implement backfill at all. That means that when you start for a checkpoint, there is no backfill for data columns, and when you increase the number of validators, there is no backfill as well. And it's my next task when I'm done with the database issue.
Okay, that sounds good. Is the idea that we deploy the Prism changes already on DevNet 5, or are you putting it in a branch that we only deploy on DevNet 6?
No, we can deploy it on the DevNet 5, no issue. But the only things to know is if the validator has more than 64, if there is more 64 validators attached to the beacon node, so this beacon node will become a super node.
Yeah, I think that's the assumption we have with all clients, basically, right?
Yeah, it's a principle of validator.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we take this into account when we're designing DevNet 6 anyway, so we should be okay.
Cool.
Any other CLs, updates or blockers on validator custody? Yeah, Agnish?
So for us, I think in itself, implementing validator custody is not too complicated, but the bigger complexity is the backfill. And the complexity that we had till date in Nimbus is we had one single block processor, which would basically be directly kind of dependent on the sidecars as well. I think I have discussed this with Manu several times, like since November. But the thing is, this entire architecture is being changed, and sidecars are being looked upon as a independent. It's basically being processed independently. Why? Because of mostly because of this reason, because of this backfill feature that we need in terms of validator custody. So because of that, we are rewriting sync. We are actually also introducing a column backfiller routine, which would handle backfilling on two cases. One is as I said, the switching from super node to full node or vice versa, and also the validator custody situation. So in terms of blocker, it's not exactly blocker, but these things, the syncing and the backfilling is taking us more time than implementing validator custody itself, because once these things are done, I don't think validator custody, like finishing it off and taking it to a testable stage, would be that time consuming. So yeah, that's pretty much from Nimbus.
Okay, sounds good. Any other points on validator custody? Yeah, Gajendra?
Yeah, since no clients are giving update, I can talk about the PR. And yeah, so the response from the PR has been that, okay, for the UX purposes, clients would not like to go for a static custody, but I think it should be left to the client whether they want to go for a static or they want to go for a dynamic custody, as long as they implement it in the sense that they only support the validators which basically can be supported by that particular static or dynamic custody. And with regard to that, so I'm still want to push for change in spec, how it's written, not to have validator indices mentioned in the spec, but only, for example, have a supported stake mentioned in the spec where we are trying to figure out what is the custody that a particular validator needs to be supported, and then there could be there is another helper to figure out how much supported stake there is from the attached validator indices. And this can basically help client implement in both the way while staying as close as to the spec as possible.
Could you post a link to the PR that you're discussing?
I think it's in the agenda once again. Yeah.
Got
so
it.
basically,
Has
Lion
any
mentioned in his. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to ask if any client teams had a chance to review this to begin with.
Yeah, so I was saying that Lion reviewed it and has basically has sort of, I mean, it's a valid point that Lion has raised regarding the UX, but I think we can leave the UX to the clients, what they want to support, and whether they support that particular UX is worth the complexity. Maybe all clients will end up supporting dynamic custody as well, but if we have spec written in a different way, then it will be possible for dynamic and static custody both to be supported.
Got it. Has any other clients have thoughts on this, by the way?
Yeah, I reviewed it, and I agree with Lion about the UX side. As a former node operator, I agree with this comment.
But is there some reason we can't do automatic with the flag being an override?
No, I think
No, I'm not asking people to support the flag. I'm saying that if we modify the spec, basically have supported stake inside the used inside the spec rather than validator indices, where we figure out what is a validator custody, and I think there is another PR in which is available data is also using validator indices. So instead of using validator indices, if we introduce supported stake as the point as a reference point, and then supported stake can be dynamically or statically provided depending upon the client implementations. So if we do this change, basically that's what I'm saying is that we would be able to support both approaches in terms of spec, and clients who want to do static can also stay close to the spec.
If you can do static, then you can also lie, right? Like how are you
You can always lie for this as well. If you change you do the dev, you fork out the client, you can always do it because there is no real validation in terms of custody. But what static also proposes that on the validator APIs, it is enforced. So the honest clients will enforce it even for static custody as well, where the duties of the validators who are going beyond the supported stake are rejected.
I don't really get the point of adding this, to be honest, because it feels like the beacon node will still need to verify somehow how many validator clients are connected.
Yes,
so
basically the point is that there is separation of concerns while you are syncing the beacon node and while you're supporting the validator APIs. It is a bit cleaner. In my opinion, there is less pollution of attached validators into beacon node operation, and the complexity is definitely a lower for this particular implementation, and we can leave it to clients what kind of UX they want to support and what kind of complexity they would want to undertake for that UX.
I think this should be up to the client teams and up to implementation instead of
Yes, so for that, I'm asking that can we modify the spec not to use validator indices in the spec and use supported stake in it, because supported stake can be dynamically or statically calculated by the clients depending upon what their approach is. But having validator indices in the spec basically takes the static custody clients away from the spec in terms of implementation and basically in terms of maintenance, and if somebody is trying to read, so code readability as well.
Yeah, I think the change itself makes sense because even after the change to the spec, client can decide to do what they do based on whatever option they want.
So if this is good, I can basically refactor the PR to do this thing and remove static as such, but just provide supported stake and
Is there any strong opposition to this change, by the way? Or, I mean, it feels like the change can be made and clients can continue to do what they're doing today anyway. So either they take the UX gain or they don't.
Yeah, I will need to read a review. Not a big fan.
Okay, then maybe we can block based on another round of async reviews, and then in the meantime, Gajinder can refine the PR, and then we take it from there. Perfect. Thank you. Cool. The next topic I wanted to bring up was cell-proof computation. I know that Get as well as Nethermind have been engaging with the topic. Does anyone from either teams/CL teams who've been engaging on the topic want to give an update on how stuff is going?
I can give an update. So, hi, this is Francis from Base. I have been working on implementing the self-proof computation to transaction center on Prism, and I have a PR kind of like up, and it's just needs some kind of like touch up and fixes, adding some tests. This on the EL side, I think Mario had a PR regard like with like get block v2, but didn't have get payload v5. So I'm trying to basically finish that part as well, so that we can have a full end-to-end test soon, hopefully this week. And once that is kind of like tested out, etc., I will make following up PRs to the consensus spec and the builder specs accordingly to update the relevant kind of like APIs and stuff. So overall, the change is not like super big in scope. The big pain point currently in implementation is just that there's get blob and proof v2, blob bundle v2, and like the beacon body contents v2, something like that. There's a lot of like a new version of like protos across different specs, builder, beacon to EL and like EL specs, etc. So that part makes implementation a little bit hectic, but overall manageable. I think that's the only thing, and we are hoping to with the kind of like implemented Prism and gas pair, we can see like the benefit of it and really flesh out the entire like path of the spec, and then help everybody else to start implementing on it.
Awesome, thank you. I also saw there were a bunch of discussions about the API to be used in general. Do you want to expand if there was any changes to be made this week, just in case other client teams are working on implementations and need an update?
I'm sorry, like API being used in what?
Sorry, not API being used, but I see there's a new CKCG release, and then you need to use 2.1. Is this, yeah?
Yeah, that is not a problem. Like it's just that the new compute sales function is going to be released in that version. So, like if you are using that like VKG library, you just need to update to it.
Got it. Okay, so it's nothing major. Yeah. Okay, are other client teams also looking into implementations? If so, where are you guys?
Yeah, so in Nethermind, we are working on it. It's not ready yet, but yeah, we're actively working on it. So should be done soon.
Okay. Any other CLs looking into implementation? And I also see Roman's on the call. Has Reth got some updates as well?
Yeah, so we started adding the related PeerDAS changes. One question I did want to bring up is, are there any test vectors available for the new network message type?
I'm not sure. Mario, do you happen to know if there's any test vectors?
No, we don't have anything yet. We're still finishing up Vectra at this moment, and we have to take a look into the spec changes. And also, we need yields implementation. That I'm not sure if anyone else is working on that. But yeah, to fill the test vectors, we're gonna need implementation. I'm gonna take a look to see what the status of that is, and we'll get back to you.
Francis, is this something you might also be able to help out with?
Would be happy to, but I guess I don't know what a test vector is.
I mean, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, sorry, yeah, thanks. I think the test vectors we can handle once we have the implementation, but the yields implementation is necessary for us to even start filling the tests. Yeah, that's it. That's the first part.
Got it. Hopefully we can finish the Prism implementation early this week, if not at the end of this week, so that we can have something for you guys.
Yeah. Also, I think, I mean, if you have also a Get implementation already, I think we can. It should be minimal changes that we need in the EVM tool from Get to be able to field test also. So that could work too as a fallback.
Cool.
I see Francis also had a message about renaming cell proofs to on returning cell proofs in the original case. Sorry. Yeah. Do you want to bring that up?
No. I think I basically took a deeper look into that. I can't really my feeling that there's already too many things that needs to be changed. It might as well be kind of be consistent and update the version of the APIs anyway, instead of some of them are updated and some of them are keeping the same name. It can be a bit confusing. So yeah, maybe scratch that.
Okay, perfect. Good. Cool. So ideally this week or early next week, we should have some implementations ready, and we should have some initial numbers on how, if cell-proof computation is actually helping speed stuff up, right? And in the meantime, other clients would continue looking at implementations along with validator studies. Okay, that sounds good. And what are the other? There's also one other open PR, I think, that we wanted to discuss on the spec. I'm just posting it here. This is from Francesco. Do you want to expand on what the PR is?
This is the PR to the IP. Yeah, I mean, it's just basically kind of defining the IP, what the new wrapper format is, and motivation for that. I added a version, I think I call it wrapper version or something, like Felix wanted. Yeah, other than that, there was basically just a question from Felix around how exactly should we define P2P acceptance of the old and the new version around the fork. Basically saying that usually P2P doesn't like doesn't quite like doesn't have a concept of forks necessarily. So like it would not be like a natural thing to just like immediately deprecate something at the or I'm not deprecate because it would still be used in other ways, but specifically for like gossip acceptance. So I'm not entirely sure like what exactly to write there about this. And yeah, then the other question is like, should something about the Engine API be added there? I think yeah, definitely like link into the Engine API PR like should be done somewhere, but yeah, basically kind of it would be nice to finalize this at some point. So just have to answer like these like kind of few things of like basically what needs to be added, what needs to be what else needs to be like more precisely specified.
Is this something we would need Felix for, or is that information something we can get from this room right now?
I mean, not think not necessarily Felix, but like just people that are generally familiar with like Yell kind of mempool practices and how things are done there, which is not really me. Yeah, I mean, Felix has definitely been like the most opinionated person on this, so I think it would definitely be helpful to get to get an opinion from him. But other than that, I don't know. I mean, anyone, I guess, you know, if you have a want to go comment on below Felix messages and or just like propose like a final change to the in the PR, then like feel free to do so.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like we would be able to get some information from Felix / everyone else async, and hopefully we merge in the PR by the next week. Okay, besides this, I know the Sunnyside lab guys have been doing some experiments. Do you want to expand on the experiments?
Yeah, hello guys. I'm Minhyuk from Sunnyside Labs. So during the past like 1-2 weeks, we have been running different tests on the PeerDAS and TetraDevNet in order to test and see what effects of increasing the blob counts on the current DevNet implementations look like. So I have sent the reports on the test in the PeerDAS Discord. So I would appreciate it if you guys could kind of take a look into it. And some feedbacks that would be really helpful for us to continue is to one is like what sort of experiments or other analysis that core developers would prefer or would be helpful for you guys. So like what tests do you want to see, like for like the self-proofs, we can also run tests with different implementation versions and like see how the difference is in the DevNets. And another thing would, yeah. And
Yes,
then another,
maybe to
yeah,
that
sorry,
point
go ahead.
already, just to help with setting the stage, I think it helps if we're able to come. So with networking, a lot of stuff changes between mainnet and devnets, purely because you will never have such optimal peering on mainnet, but on devnets they definitely do. So one of the approaches that tends to help is if you have a baseline. So you can have Pectra with regular 6.9, then you can have PeerDAS with 6.9, and you can showcase just how PeerDAS as a change has affected the baseline. And then you can look at increase in blobs. So essentially just look at the differences because the baseline will be different from mainnet, if that makes sense.
Right. So yeah, definitely. So we did the baseline test on PetraDevNet last week. So we were increasing the blob count per block from like 1 to 72 in the PetraDevNet. And we noticed that in like the most optimal networking conditions, the blobs were being filled in without much problem. So we were also doing the similar test with the current PeerDAS implementation in the PeerDAS DevNet 5, the client versions in the PeerDAS DevNet 5. And we noticed that we started seeing like the networking breaking apart at around 10 blobs. But the thing is that there are much more configuration related to PeerDAS, like the custody requirement or like the ratio of full nodes or super nodes or how many like different node types there are in the network. So I think it would be also helpful for us to know like which type, like what is the best optimal setup for us to make in the DevNet to optimally test PeerDAS.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
we can definitely discuss this in a thread on PeerDAS testing, but I think you would
Yeah.
want to see essentially 2 or 3 different types of setup. So one would be as similar to mainnet as possible. And I think the ProLab guys have a really nice dashboard where they sample different structures on mainnet, essentially like 40-ish% super nodes, 60-ish% full nodes, as well as a bandwidth distribution for that. The second one would be flat network with really low limits. So this is essentially worst case, what happens if every massive node on the network goes away. So this is absolute worst case scenario. And then I think you would have some sort of optimal scenario where it's higher bandwidth limitation, but this is what we recommend on mainnet. So there's a post by Kev about bandwidth requirements, and essentially a flat network with set bandwidth requirements would make sense. So like 3 different scenarios.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we can do that. And I'll follow up in the Discord channel afterwards as well.
Perfect. And I think Ansgar also has a point on the EL mempool side. Yeah, essentially of potentially limiting mempool bandwidth, right? I don't know if Ansgar has a mic, but
yeah, sorry. I mean, it was just a very small thing, but like in discussions with Sketh the other day, they came up with this idea of basically optionally offering like a flag of sorts to limit mempool load, throttle it in some way. That the most direct way would be like a direct bandwidth kind of upper limit. It could also be, if that's too complicated, it could just be like a maximum number of blob transactions per second or something. Just basically because we expect obviously like that the background kind of mempool load on clients will scale with the number of blob transactions or like blobs overall in the network. And for some nodes, it's not a concern, of course, like in terms of burst, like when the block is published, but just as background kind of bandwidth strain. That could become a concern for weaker bandwidth nodes. And so if there would be like an easy flag for those nodes to basically set, that might be very useful.
Yeah, I'm not sure we have the critical mass of EL devs to have that discussion on this call, but it does make sense to try and have it on ECD perhaps.
We can do that as well.
Yeah, maybe a mempool breakout. Yes, thank you very much for the experiments. I guess we would engage a bit more on Discord to figure out what the scenario should be, and it would be great if client teams can also start posting what they would want to see. Maybe the next steps for that topic might be presenting on ECD. I'm not sure if this week might make sense, but potentially plan to do it sooner rather than later. Purely because I think a lot of people who might have contrary views / opinions on what data they want to see might not be the ones who are implementing PeerDAS, might be the extended core dev community. So it might make sense not to hide the data.
I haven't followed up on the ACD schedule, but yeah, we can definitely work on something in the coming weeks as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Is there any other topic we have to discuss today? Yeah, do you want to go FLCL on engine RPC perhaps?
No, just was talking about with Mari about that we could prepare some methods to work according to new proof encoding, and probably it would be tested in Hive.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ansgar?
we need a transition tool support. That, I mean, yeah, it seems route transaction could be useful, but it's like way later in the testing cycle, in my opinion. Yeah, we need a transition tool first.
Yeah. Ansgar, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, but not on the spine. I just realized that there was still on the spine deck. So just one last thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think the topic of Hive is over. I think we would just need the transition tool first, so there's nothing else to really discuss.
Okay, yeah, then I just want to very briefly, we already talked about it quite extensively in the chat, but just for anyone who didn't pay much attention there, and there is this topic of this batch publishing proposal by Saba and several people, which we are, I think, is not quite sure yet, but we have the feeling that it might actually be very critical on the block building side to basically to not end up in a state where with PeerDAS any normally kind of normal bandwidth node at home will only be able to build like very low blob count blocks. I think you have to like leave 95% of the blob section empty if you build locally, whereas with batch publishing, hopefully that means you even normal kind of bandwidth nodes can still build reasonably sized blob sections. And so this might end up making a difference in terms of what throughput numbers we can ship at, depending on what what does in the end feel like what is reasonable for local building to be a requirement there. And so just for CL clients that haven't looked at that at all yet, just something where like ideally this should be considered.
Yeah, Francis, go ahead.
Yeah, quick thoughts on that. So for like the block publishing side, there's like distributed block publishing that could potentially help. That depends on like the EL like get block v2 endpoints. So basically the idea is you publish the block first and you don't quite need to publish all the columns out like all the other clients, maybe supernodes on the network when they have all the blobs, all the transaction blobs, all the blob transactions, they can like help you publish all the blobs out, all of the columns out. And there are, I don't quite remember the first thing, but there are some other like mechanism that could help alleviate the problem as well. So I think, yeah, the gist is that we should probably like add as many like network optimizations as possible. But like in my opinion, it is not like strictly necessary to have this like gossip sub like implementation there. But yeah, we will definitely try to like add that if it's possible.
Has anyone thought of how this research post goes into a PR, or is the idea that we prototype it in XYZ client and then first check if it's actually beneficial? Like, what are the next steps basically? Okay, Francesco already is one step ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about this. I just know that both Lighthouse and Prism have looked into this a little bit, and there's this PR from, I think, Nishant and Age. I think this was, very much like early stage, kind of like looking into this, but yeah, I think it's what exists right now.
Yeah, to add,
go ahead.
Sorry, to add a little bit into that, Prism seems like from the data today, Prism has an implementation. Lighthouse is working on one, and based on base side, we will contribute one engineer to this to try to like we can be the status tracker for this core and to really like try to like drive this forward. But yeah, I think it's just starting.
Okay, perfect. So this could still be a topic that is auxiliary to PeerDAS. either it makes it into the critical path or not, but it's still too early to say.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, of course, it would be bad to waste effort on this if it's not on the critical path. So I think we also like on the theory side will maybe look a bit more into like how much do we think this might have to be load bearing, and so yeah, we can follow up on this, but just want to flag it for now.
Perfect. Thank you. Then we'll add it to the tracking list, as Francis said, and then we can get status updates and decide probably down the line if it's in the critical path. Awesome. We're already over time. So thank you all for joining, and keep in touch on PeerDAS testing.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.